So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Pakhuis de Zwijger and welcome to the 38th edition of New Democracy, the New Democracy series. Tonight we will be talking about future democracies, which is a title that we've borrowed from a recent publication of one of our primary speakers I will be introducing shortly. My name is Charlotte Schans. For those of you who have been to more of the New Democracy editions, normally this is moderated by Natasja van den Berg. And I have the honor to substitute her for tonight because she's downstairs hosting another event. So I'm very honored to substitute a brilliant moderator in my respect. But the New Democracy series, for those of you who are not familiar, is something that has started 3 years ago in a collaboration between Netwerk Democracy and Pakhuis de Zwijger to explore the principles of a future, a new future for our democracy. And we do so in these evenings by from the lens of the transition theory that has been introduced in one of the first editions by the scientist John Ginn. That means that we will be looking at experiments and niche practices that actually address the system, the current system as it is. And we will be looking at things that work or things that don't work and what they imply for our current system, and in this case, our democratic system. Tonight we will be talking about the future democracies with speakers reflecting from theory and practice from cities like Madrid, Amsterdam, Rotterdam and Milan. And they all have been experimenting with democratic innovation. But tonight I would also love to look a little bit beyond these experiments and to its implications to see whether they have the ability or have had the ability to actually change the democratic system already. So that is a nice challenge for all of us tonight. And we will do so with 4 very honorable guests I will be introducing to you shortly. But first a bit for you all to know what to expect of tonight. As per tradition in these New Democracy evenings, we will start with a short interview with one of the speakers, and then the in-depth conversation will take place at this round table in the middle. But you're all very invited to join in the conversation. There are only 2 basic rules. So if you want to chip in and ask questions to the speakers or contribute to the discussion, please feel free, but do so by going to the interruption microphone and make sure to follow the natural flow of the conversation, I would say. So please don't ask questions about something that has been addressed 20 minutes ago or try to entirely change the subject of the evening. And the second rule is don't queue behind the microphone. So wait for your turn and just silently listen in and then take your turn once it's available. And then for my co-speakers, I've been talking to you a little bit already, but I would love us to have as much of an open conversation. So also trigger your own curiosity and feel free to learn from each other and ask each other questions during the talk that we'll be having. So as said, the publication that we borrowed the title from, Future Democracies, has been co-edited by Iago Bermejo from Lab Prado, who I would like to invite to step forward. Our first guest of this evening. No, come in. We'll start from here. So Iago, you're the project leader of Lab Prado. Welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about what Lab Prado is?
Lab Prado is a citizen lab. It is owned by the City Council, and it's a little bit similar from this place in terms of space. So it's an open space to make workshops, to make presentations. And what is a citizen lab? Well, a citizen lab is a place where people arrive not just to see an exposition, for example, or a concert or whatever. People arrive there to produce something, to produce knowledge, to create things, making things, and this is the objective. It's a little bit turning out how culture works, not going to a cultural space just to see things, but also to create things.
Not to consume, but to produce, co-produce.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's based also on free culture. That means that everything that is produced should be for the common good. So everything is free license.
Okay. Open source you mean as well, like Creative Commons?
Yes, free, yes.
Great. So, and what is your your involvement in the issues around democracy then?
After the previous government of Manuela Carmena in Madrid City, they have created in Madrid City an entire area of open government. That means a big bet on participation and transparency in the government. So from this area, they look at Media Lab as a possible collaborator. So they found an entire project of between 3 and 4 years, where I was involved as coordinator manager of that project. And the objective is to it's like having a lab center on innovation, collaboration around open government strategies that the government was running those years. For example, the digital platform, the site Madrid, that we will speak a little bit later.
Yes. So tell me a bit about the outcomes of the lab that you were working on.
As you can see here, this is a digital platform that, it could be like a normal platform, but it's completely free software. That means that it has been replicated in a dozen of cities and other governments all around the world. That is one of the main objectives of free software, like to have like free things for common good, for being used. And it's a platform, a bottom-up platform, we call it. So it's not run. Contents are not created by the government, but contents are created in a bottom-up way. So people decide what to propose, make proposals, and decide also what is more visualized and what can be finally decided from those proposals. So there is 100 million of projects funded from the participatory budgeting side, and that means a lot of money just for cities, just for projects that have been completely created by citizens.
So can you name a few? You say projects, but maybe for the rest of the people here, it's not super
Yes,
clear what kind of
projects
projects
that can change the city. For example, you have little children and you need a park to play. So you can create a project and say, okay, I want a park to play in my neighborhood, and I want it to be like that. And I submit the project. I create a community to support the proposal and help to gain support. That means that it's shared in WhatsApp, wherever. So you can you can be in the ranking to be voted and then to be selected. So it has to be also this kind of process to select which projects are going to be finally implemented.
And you said 100 projects have been funded already the last couple of years?
844.
800. Oh, wow, 844.
Yes.
Amazing. And so that there has been quite a budget then available from the city of Madrid to implement
100
these
million every year.
Okay.
Yes, so it's a lot of money.
So for whoever is a little bit familiar in this field, that's quite a lot in comparison to many other cities, I say. I think the city of Paris does 20 million in 4 years.
No, it's the same. It's the same as City of Paris. We are like...
Oh, is it? Oh, then they recently changed that. Okay, but it's quite impressive. And so what was your role as Media Lab Prado in this process?
This publication is a little bit the outcome of our project. And our project was called Participalab, like collective intelligence for... here it is, Laboratory of Collective Intelligence for Participatory Democracy. Like this is the long word, but we used to say Participalab on Twitter. So it's a lab of participation. So we are focused on how to turn the collective intelligence that happened when the interaction of people using software. It's a new kind of intelligence, and usually in this academic field of collective intelligence is when that happens, there are many people studying that, how the interaction between computers, internet, and humans produce intelligence. So in collective intelligence for democracy, it means not using to have a better company that is used many times in, for example, United States, but turn this collective intelligence into common good for your city, and for democracy, for society.
So and how, would you say that the console tool that's behind this and the site Madrid was co-designed in your lab with people from the city of Madrid?
Not exactly, because it was released so fast that there were no time to organize that. When it was released, my lab was not even working. So usually what politicians do is like they hire some advisors to let them do their job. This is how usually work in politics. But Paulo Soto, who is the counselor, he's coming from the free software world. He has contracted 4 advisors that were just hackers, that were just programming in a room. So after 2 months, the City of Madrid was released. And what we have been doing is working on the innovation around the platform. So we start to focus on what is going on in the platform, what is happening. We start to analyze, and we start to propose new features, and even starting to develop new features and to suggest the government to implement them.
So more the iteration phase of the first version of the platform.
Yes, that's it.
And you say you published the Future Democracies publication recently, also to understand a bit more of the lessons of the last couple of years in Madrid and elsewhere. Yeah. Can you share a little bit of those lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yes, well, I'm a little bit my head is overflowing when you ask me that question, because we have made so much things, but we have been working we have realized that digital participation could become very individualistic, even could be conquered by populism, because finally it's about getting supports in the media. So we believe, and we have, this is a little bit our main conclusion, that deliberation and collaboration should be included in the process of collective intelligence using digital tools. So why we have started to trying to connect and to create some projects and pilots to go in that direction. For example, we have been studying how to cluster proposals that are similar using natural language and artificial intelligence, and then make calls to all these people that is isolated at maybe in the bus or in their homes, proposing things, to start to collaborate together to turn these initial ideas into really nice proposal that could be directly implemented in the city council. So we call it that proponent communities. It's one of the chapters of the book. Also, we have include a panel review for proposals. So proposals don't necessarily need to get a lot of supports to be approved. That is the citizen proposals, but they could be reviewed by a panel of randomly selected citizens, and they could decide if those proposals are important and to go further with them. Also, we have been working on features for the platform, like a dashboard for proposal to create more engagement around one proposal, to create a community around a proposal, to help these communities promote in a similar way as crowdfunding is doing. Crowdfunding has a lot of history of digital activity, so they have been learning many things. So we have been trying to import those things into crowd petitioning or crowd proposing.
And so I want to get back a little bit to that notion of collective intelligence that you were referring to before. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means for you in terms of how you perceive society and how you perceive collaboration within society?
As I have said, collective intelligence nowadays, if you see in the academic world, is referred to how to interact, the interaction between humans, computers, web networks. But it's true that collective intelligence is it comes from further in the past, we could say, because we humans as a species, we have a collective intelligence. We are like ants, no? We are not going through the forest like alone. We have been always like a tribe. So we have evolved like that. So every different personality, every different profile of our tribe is a different role in a collective intelligence. So we have always solved that in history We have solved problems. We have faced nature in that way, and our intelligence is like that. It's collective. We cannot be in intelligence as a species individually. We are like that.
Yeah, and how should that impact democracy then? And how is that like? Because at the representative democracy, you sort of translate or you give away your responsibilities to certain people that represent you. But how would you rather see the democracy functioning?
Well, the problem I think is that we have inherited some kind of behavior from tribes. So now we are governed by tribes that are called political parties, and they are a sort of we could say, I sometimes say partitocracy, because they are like oligarchies, like sort of little tribe oligarchies. So everyone connected, a lot of clientelism inside, and sometimes they arrive to power, and then maybe there's another party. So what happened is that we are not using the collective intelligence of the whole population. They are just a bunch of people governing the rest of the population. So it's important to expand this little collective intelligence that tribes used to have, and that is what they are using now in the government, to the whole population, because there are thousands of expertise in society, and they cannot be all included in a government, because advisors you can take maybe 5 or 10 for each ministry or councillor. So it's very important to upgrade collective intelligence in terms of governance, to include everyone.
So also, as you say, with the example of the City of Madrid platform, the fact that you have initiatives by citizens that actually improve the city, that you should be working on that together and on basis of collaboration. That's where you mobilize the collective intelligence.
Sometimes I call that distributed democracy, because when you are governing and you are like a representative, elected representative, your head is like a bottleneck. It means that you cannot create thousands of projects or hundreds of projects at the same time, because you have some limited programs, some limited ideas. When you let people propose things, there are unexpected things that happen. And there are proposals that I sometimes call why not proposals, that nobody is against them, they are not very expensive, and they could be done by hundreds. So let people propose things, let all these why not proposals being done is a very easy strategy that every city should be doing right now.
Great. And does it? Do you believe, because it for me the notion is quite positive about humankind. It's almost philosophical, the way that you look at humankind from the collective intelligence perspective. But do you believe that there's some sort of self-controlling mechanism whenever people start collaborating, as you were saying with the example that a type of direct democracy can also be hijacked almost by populism, but the fact that if you start working more deliberatively as a democracy, you control for that?
Yes, I think populism is based on people not thinking. This is the strategy, so we need people thinking to combat populism. That's the key part. And deliberation is about that. It's about people should be informed, should think, and should propose public policies.
And how does the interaction between a digital platform that can sometimes also be used super, in a shallow way, like with one click you can vote for something, how does that relate to the deliberative democracy for you? How do you see the interaction between deliberative democracy and digital platforms?
The way decisions are made should not be just based on votes or supports. That's one part. And this is related with what I have been explaining with the panel review. So this is one interesting part. And the other one is internet helps to make people raise their hands saying, here I am. I have a busy life, but here I am. Because I have children, I have a job, but I have this idea because I have experience every day. I go through this street, I take the bus, so I know this place. I know maybe this place more than anyone in the city, or maybe we have 10 people that we know this corner of the street very well, and we know that here we could do wherever.
So
No?
it lowers the threshold for democratic participation of an
Yes,
individual.
so everyone raising their hands are also contributing to ideas. Okay, so we are creating like a big data of ideas, affections, complaints in the city. So digital platforms are a way to start the collaboration of citizens. So everyone thinking about similar issue could be contacted to start to collaborate. So we can break a little bit the isolation that our society creates with our rhythm of life, no? To start collaborating with other citizens and being helped by digital platforms.
And then as Media Lab, you also facilitate next phases. So you bring people together to talk more thoroughly about these issues or
yes,
beyond the digital platform.
exactly. Media Lab Prado is doing many workshops at many scales. We have workshops related with, we have our workshop with, I have Omer here that he was there one of the years, and it was more about expertise distributed around the world thinking about participation. So we collect all these people and we let them propose projects and develop projects during 15 days full time. It's like really, thank you, Homer. It was difficult, but you made it. And this is one strategy, but we have all other different strategies. For example, we have been mixing citizens with civil servants to create projects also, and it's also a different strategy. And we have been also randomly selecting participants, but we have been also creating proponent communities, as I explained, connecting with the digital platform, people thinking in the same way. So definitely is an open space to let people meet together and collaborate.
Great. Yes. So and then maybe not everyone is familiar. We can talk a little bit about the recent political changes in the city of Madrid. I think that's interesting because the person that you're referring to, the former mayor, she gave a lot of energy to what happened recently in Madrid. Now the government is being replaced by much more like conservative and right-wing politicians. What does that mean for the democratic innovation that you've recently advocated
that's
for?
a nice question. What happened is that when you start working in an institution, we have been working all of our lives previously in social movements. So we were like activists with no money at all. And we had this opportunity and we think a lot about the future of what we were doing. And the future means also that you need something to remain, to be permanent, because politicians and governments change all the time. And who is coming, maybe is not going to be your friend. So the strategy in the government has been trying to make something that is neutral, that is not partisan, and it could be that to create a feeling of pertenencia. I don't know how to say that in ownership of the tools that we are. So we need to, for example, we need to arrive to a lot of impact in Madrid citizens to, after that, let the other opposition parties understand that they cannot erase everything. And also international recognition that has been very important in Madrid City with a United Nations award. I mean, who can erase a digital platform with a with United Nations award? So this is complicated. So there have been several strategies, and it seems we have succeeded in some way. The government has succeeded. I have been in the lab helping as I could, and now the actual government, that is conservative, liberal, supported by far right, has said that is going to continue with participatory budgeting and decide Madrid.
Congratulations.
We are not expecting that they're going to still innovate around these processes, because this is too much. I mean, they are not really interested. They are not going to erase it, but they are going to leave, for example, the digital platform. It seems, for the moment, they have said that. So we are very happy about that. well, because we have replicate also, we have helped other cities to replicate the processes, and using this kind of digital platforms like this kind of processes, we expect that innovation can happen in other places to follow the path that is open by Madrid and other places that also are doing interesting experiments. So we have to continue because we are just in a moment of learning with these kind of things. So we need to still learn in other cities where the innovation could be pushed a little bit further.
So with regard to that, do you have cities that you are inspired by? Like I know Consul is being used, the digital platform is being used in 140 cities, if I believe it well, or at least implemented there. So what are cities that inspire you most with what they do?
Well, the map of inspiration is not the same map, and maybe could be even opposite, because this could be said that cities that we have inspired. Yeah. Okay. So inspiration has been coming. Well, and that's one other part of the work that we have been doing in the lab, creating a network of innovation and inviting everyone that is doing something that is interesting for us. So we have been inspired by the deliberative movement that is happening in, we could say, the we call it Anglo-Saxon world in Spanish. I don't know, is the literally translation, but for us is the north. We are like the Latin south, and there is the north, like you, like blonde hair. That in Canada, Ireland, United States, Netherlands. I'm coming from the G1000 event that is also very inspirational for us. For us, also in Belgium. This has been a really nice inspiration, and it was not technopolitics at all. It was like people innovating just with a deliberative face-to-face events or teaching, and it has been very helpful. Also, in a technopolitical way, we have been very connected with Taiwan. Taiwan, I believe that you are gonna have some speaker soon from Taiwan. Has been innovating with another level of technology that we don't even can imagine in old Europe. You know, because usually Audrey Tang, that is one of the digital ministry of Taiwan, she said, "I'm coming from the future." She said that because, you know, it's in the future in the time schedule in the world. But it's a joke because she also is coming from the future because the digitalization and connectivity of those countries is completely incredible. So they have been doing experiments with virtual reality. They have been doing a lot of...
a virtual reality of a democracy?
Yes, they have been using virtual reality for participation strategies. That's completely unbelievable, but that's true. And they have been using digital tools. They have this organization called GovZero that has been also connected with the actual government. And this has been also very inspirational for us. And well, in the network, there are people from many countries. We have very good friends in Latin America, some of them in Africa, Europe. So we have really plenty of experience to look at.
All over, great. So, and what do you hope to learn tonight from your co-discussants?
Well, I hope to learn what's going on here in Amsterdam, and what could happen in Amsterdam also. I mean, that even could be more interesting, which is the future of innovation here in Amsterdam.
Okay, beautiful. Well, we're lucky to have someone from Amsterdam with us tonight. So please take a seat. I'll join you at the table. Thank you, Iago Bermejo. Because we're going to invite some of our other guests to speak with Iago. May I invite Ines Balkema from the City of Rotterdam. She's the project leader of the Right to Challenge in the City of Rotterdam. Sjoukje Alta, Head of Democratic Innovation of the City of Amsterdam. And Letizia Chiappini, PhD at the University of Amsterdam and Milano, currently studying this issue as well. So welcome. So you've been able to listen in a little bit to what Iago was explaining about the city of Madrid and the work of Lab Prado. Ines, can I start with you? Can you reflect a little bit from what Rotterdam has been experimenting with the last couple of years?
Okay, of course. We have been experimenting with different democratic renewal projects. We have experimented with a citizen jury. And this is what we are doing in Rotterdam is we start with new projects. We start experimenting and we keep on innovating. We are all the time we are looking at what are the results, what can we do better. So this citizens jury was 150 citizens that would come together twice a year and judge the municipality on what they were doing. They also would create the councillor, and they had a chance to talk to civil servants. At first, we had this jury for the whole city, and now we are doing it different. We really believe in being closer to the people. So right now, our political board meets up with people in their neighborhood. Every 2 or 3 weeks, they go to another neighborhood, and they take all the aldermen and the mayor, and they are sitting on the table, and 10 citizens can join them and talk to them, and they do 2 rounds. And at the end, the alderman will tell the citizens what they have heard and what they are going to do with this. We also experimented with City Lab 10. This is a project, it's a little bit like what they are doing in Madrid, but we don't have so much money. We have like 3.2 million a year for innovative projects. We are experimenting with right to challenge. That's what I'm doing. Neighborhoods that believe that they can do a task better than the City of Rotterdam. They can come up with a plan and they will get our money structural. And we also have, we were working with a digital opinion pool and referendum. And then next to that, but maybe I'm talking for way too long, we are also experimenting with a new governance. We have, like what they had in Amsterdam, we have deelgemeentes, area councils. These are big. These are about 5 or 6 neighborhoods. But just a year ago, we started experimenting with neighborhood councils and neighborhood committees. And the interesting about the neighborhood committees is that we draw people that these people, it's like a lottery. We pick them from the neighborhood, and 1 out of every 5 citizens we approached said yes. And what is the most nice thing about this is that in these neighborhood committees you see the people who really live in this neighborhood. We are a very cultural diverse city. We have more than 206 nationalities. And if you look at our 6 neighborhood committees, you see all these different people. And these people, they are not from a political party. They are selected as citizens. This is the same in the we also have these neighborhood councils, but those people are elected. But this also, most of them are normal citizens who could raise their hand and say, I want to be on the list and I'm gonna do the campaign. And what we aim for is that we want citizens to represent citizens, and we don't want political parties with their own plans to. We want to hear the voice of the citizens. So I think one of the most important things we are doing is that we want politicians, citizens, civil servants to go into the neighborhood, to talk to people, to be approachable. It's not about organizing meetups and once in a time you can talk to us. No, you have to stay in contact and keep the discussion going.
Thank you very much.
May I ask the citizen jury, can you put an example of one of the tasks that the citizen jury has been?
Well, every time they got together, there was a different elderman presenting what he has been done and what his policy was like, and then they voted over the different subjects, and at the end they gave him a number. But our mayor was there once too, and I think he got a 7.5 or something like that. Out of 10. Out of 10. And sometimes they only got a 6, but sometimes they got an 8. And at the end of the evening, the civil servants would collect IDs. And the next, when we had the next citizens jury, the elderman who had his turn on the last citizens journey would tell what he had done with the information he got and what he had done to approve his work.
And what if it's insufficient? What if the grade is below 5?
Yeah, I don't think we have had below 5, but I do remember that one of our politicians, Joost Eertmans, you might know him, he's from Leefbaar, he only got a 7 and he wasn't happy. So he said, okay, I will approve, next time you see me here, I will do better.
Interesting. And so for the neighborhood committees, what is their role?
Their role, that's the neighborhood committees, they are there to talk to citizens, to advise the city board. So that's and next to that they how do you say this in English? They do representation tasks, ceremonies. They organize meetings around New Year's and holidays. But the most important task is that they tell the departments of the city and the city board what the people want, and they are asked for advice.
And so I want to go back a bit to the right to challenge,
Yes.
because that's your primary responsibility, and also one of the more fundamental instruments right now of the City of Rotterdam. In which a group of citizens can actually challenge the government, and you start immediately talking about the financial consequences of that. So you can challenge and say we're better at a certain service, and then there can be a procurement procedure in which the citizens actually take over a certain responsibility.
That's right, yes.
Can you give a few examples? For
I can
those
give
who know?
a few examples, and I also would like to tell something about the struggle we have gone through, because this is not easy for a big company like the City of Rotterdam. We have had, I have to think because it's in English. We have had a street which challenged the design of the street. You might have this in Madrid also, that the ground is lowering, and then when the ground level is dropping, and you have to redo the street because otherwise people won't be able to step out of their front door. So, and the City of Rotterdam came up with a plan, and they organized an evening for the people who lived in the street to tell them about the plan.
Public consultation.
Yeah, public consultations, thank you very much. And then my colleague said, yes, we are going to redo the street, and when you hire the ground, all the trees will die. And in the street, there were professional architects living, and an engineer, and they said, oh, we can do this better. And we can also do the participation better, because you understand this wasn't a nice evening. All these people who lived in the street saw their trees gone and got quite angry.
200 trees were supposed to be taken out of the street, right? Yeah,
yes, that's right. That's right. So, and this was, what is really interesting is that these citizens, they organized evenings to show their neighbors what they were doing, and at the end, and they worked together on a plan, and at the end they showed what they came up with, and then the neighbors, they looked at it, and everyone was looking at what's happening in front of my door. So it was, they were in the same position as my colleagues who normally do this work. So with Right to Challenge, you see that you also get a better understanding for the work we are doing. And it is really about working together.
And you were saying, and then I want to move on to the next city, I would say. But you were saying something about the struggles that you faced within the Rotterdam system.
Yes, when we started, we talked to citizens about what they wanted and what we could do better. And I selected a broad group of civil servants around me from all the different parts of the city. And one of the things we thought about was that this is the hardest part, is getting the organization to move along. You know, citizens are way ahead of us, but to get this organization along, and we understood that it is for civil servants quite hard if your work is challenged. So what we did is we came up with a sort of, how do you say this? Doorzettingsmacht. Power board. We got managers from the different departments in a board, and a director on top of it. And these are the people who think about if we should accept the challenge or not. But they are not the ones to decide. We don't want civil servants to decide on, are we going to do this challenge? So these are the Eldermen who decide. So they have to come up with an advice, and they have to explain why they want this challenge or why not. And then it's out of their hands, and the Eldermen decide if we are going to go on with this challenge. And this works really well. And what we also want is that this power board, that all the managers from the different departments decide together. It's not that if your department is challenged, that you can write this advice. No, what we want is that the challenges do something good for the neighborhood. And it might be that it's not really good for your department, but it's really good for some other departments. And then we still want it to go on.
So in that sense, you try to look a bit more integrated and not necessarily within the silos that would otherwise advise.
That's right.
Maybe against it. Okay, thank you so much. And I think what is interesting that you say that for kind of an outward-looking government, you end up facing that sometimes the struggles are much more within your own system and how to
really that's the point. The struggles are within the system.
Yeah.
And you see that in 4 years that things are really moving, that more and more people come along, and some departments have a really hard task, and it's more difficult, but we see that the department that's about het groen onderhoud, the
maintenance of the green spaces,
maintenance of the green space, they are really embarrassing, of how do you say, embracing. Thank you, embracing Right to Challenge, and they see this as an easy way to give money to projects for the longer time. We also in Rotterdam we have a lot of projects that are financed year by year by year, and this costs the organization a lot of money. So if we really like these projects, we can say from challenges, then we can give you the money for the rest of the time.
Yes, that even makes economic sense.
It makes economic sense, yes.
Thanks. Thank you so much. So I think I want to get back to that subject that we addressed briefly later on with all the speakers, because I think the aspect of systemic change and everything that you face within the system is relevant to many of us. Sjoukje, can I first ask you to tell us a little bit about what is happening currently in the City of Amsterdam and what your role is as head of democratic innovation?
Well, lots of things are going on. Are you sure you want want me to tell you about all the experiments that we are starting, not finishing, maybe restarting.
All of them. No,
getting old
let's
things out
get
of
into
boxes and starting them all over because there's new political possibilities.
let's go into the ones that were most impactful or that you learned from the most.
Amsterdam's a very fascinating city, I think, because it's little villages and working as a big city in a small country. So that's Amsterdam. And the challenges in Amsterdam are too big. They're too big for just 14,000 ambtenaren.
Civil
sorry, my
servants?
English is not too good. But
You can
it's
switch to Spanish, maybe.
Oh yeah,
Italian.
maybe that's well, it won't get any better then. So you have to do it with this
Civil
this English.
servants.
So the 14,000 civil servants, and we have about 30 members, a mayor and Elderman, around 30. So that's not enough to deal with the challenges of the city. And the good thing is that the citizens know it. The city knows it. The city knows it. It goes faster than the system does. But the system is stuck not only in the system of the organization, but also in the political system. Because it's very difficult to if you're responsible, you want to be responsible and you want to make the big decisions. That's what you're paid for, that's what you want to do. One of the first things that we said to our Elderman to democratize, I hate the word, we have a program, what's my title?
Head of democratization.
Yeah, exactly, that's, how is it possible? Because it's like I know now what we have to do when we democratize. It's crazy because I know nothing. I know everything with everybody around us, and we have to work together.
Collective intelligence.
Exactly. And we can't look at one person in particular. We can't.
Don't be a tribe, please.
Yeah. No, you can't be a tribe as well. We can't be anything anymore. So we have to stand up, be responsible, and act. I'm actually kind of fed up with situations where we only advise each other. The whole system in Amsterdam is built on people that advise each other. I think if we stop advising and start working, the city is going to be in a very fast way, very different. Because then we have to act and we get responsible. And I tell you, you are responsible, what are you going to do? And you can't tell me, well, I'm going to advise you to do something else, because we all talk about everybody else. There's nobody ever talking about himself and what he can do differently. And that's kind of, I think that's actually the secret. And it goes quite well with the city. So we really don't have to change things. I think everybody's really happy in Amsterdam. Are you happy in Amsterdam? Are you living in Amsterdam? Happy, not happy, not too happy? A little bit happy?
The happy few are here, we hear.
But there's no real crisis that tells us that we need each other to kind of reinvent.
So a lack of sense of
people.
urgency, you mean?
I think there's a lack of sense of urgency, definitely. In the system, of course there's crisis, but is it really big enough that we demonstrate for it? No. Are we demonstrating? Are we really
rallying?
Activated to change the policies of the City of Amsterdam or the policies on national government level? Are we doing that?
But what can we do then? So how do you see the role? You say so we're not. Is it also a little bit of a critique on citizens' advice, maybe in the democracy? Are you also talking about how maybe the democracy should also be based on the actions of citizens, maybe rather than the opinions?
Yeah, yes, definitely. But also we need to solve problems. There is a housing crisis. Everybody knows it, and it's going to be terrible if we don't do anything. But nobody can solve it all by itself. So we should organize hackathons, and we should invite strange people that don't meet in a regular way, actually. And they should kind of talk about this problem and see what we can do. And I think that's the next level of to democratize, actually, to kind of make more meetups with people that have strange ideas, good ideas, bad ideas, but just put them together, start talking about, just start talking, actually. I think when you start meeting and start talking, then there will be new ideas. But people seem to only talk to the people they know or the people that look alike and that think alike. And nothing new comes from people that speak and look alike. So we need different, exactly
so
what you're doing.
In some sense, you have said that there is no enough energy for the revolution, we could say. But I mean, there is no enough energy to activate big changes in Amsterdam. That's a little bit, because it reminds me the situation in Madrid, because people in the government managing the same things as you was coming from the 15M, that is like Occupy movement in Madrid, that was so powerful. And there was so much energy. So they arrived to the city council and they said, we're going to open doors. This is going to be the revolution. Everyone is going to come here and we're going to change everything. But finally, it was a calm sea. Yeah. Because it's not the same as being in a movement with all this kind of energy in the street, that like being in the government that you are seeing like with not so confident. So it was the same sensation in Madrid at the very beginning, that there was no energy coming from people. So it's really a challenge to face that.
Yeah, but how do you then again, because Amsterdam is also very energetic. I mean, there's no city probably that has the level of initiative that Amsterdam does. Everybody's working in their neighborhood or is working at different places, and everybody is thinking, should I work with the government? Is it going to be easy? Is it going to be difficult? If it's going to be too difficult because it's bureaucratic, I might not just work with the government this time because it takes too much energy. And that's what we need to reconnect, I think. We need to find each other, challenge each other, and look each other in the eye and say, if there's a problem, let's not advise each other on how to deal with the problem. Let's start acting and solve the problem. And then you need politicians, and you need people that own houses, and you need people that make policies, and you need people that live in the houses, because there are going to be problems if we don't do anything.
And tell us a bit about how you perceive the possibilities of collaboration between citizens or civic initiatives and the government. Like, how do you see the future within your new position?
Well, there's I was just saying there's so many people that are taking initiative, and what we've seen is that they've through the years they started to make their own projects, and now they are kind of reconnecting with each other to challenge the system again. And I think that's a very good start. So one of these days, our Elderman democratization, sorry, we need to find a new term for that, we'll get a piece of paper with that's made by 600 people in the city, doing proposals on how to change the system, how to find new levels of co-creating, how to inspire on the big issues, and kind of start this new way of talking and this new way of not advising but actually doing.
So a new societal agreement is what it's going to be about.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Sjoukje.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to add something, because I'm from Madrid. That is a big city. We have realized one thing, that being in a city now, I mean, we are changing the paradigm of a little bit of states. We are starting to think about huge cities, because people is accumulating in cities, no? And it's going to be the future of humanity, no? Living around cities, it seems, no? For the moment. Yeah. So in Madrid, we were thinking about not how to change our city, but also how to change the world. I mean, that's important for you, because I think Amsterdam is a big city and also it has a nice budget. So in Madrid, we had this strategy of replication, for example, so helping other cities. So this kind of network of innovation, not just for Madrid, but also for other cities. And also we were thinking in the last part that we didn't have time to make experiments, like, for example, for global democracy. So it's not just about changing the city, it could be also about changing the world. That this is something that cities can do. Cities have a lot of power, a lot of resources.
I totally agree. And it only works if we start thinking big. We have to think big, but act very, very local. And if we start acting local, then something will really start and things really get going fast, I think, because the localities are there. It's happening. People are already, we had this great right to challenge 3-4 years ago when there was this neighborhood that said there were people from Syria inside of Amsterdam because we had 9,000 people Syria. And there was an area in East where they started. At first they were in this local sports thing. And the area said, we're not going to get these people to go to these huge places where they are stuck far away in some
disappear in the system,
not only in the system, but also outside of a city where there's no jobs, there's no way you can meet. So we want to keep people here. And they got 45 people out of this sports center, and they just made them speak Dutch. They sent them to schools. They gave them bikes. They were doing things in the sports clubs. These people are integrated, and their kids speak better Dutch than many people that just arrived now, or that have been here for 5-6 years. These people really, really, really felt welcome and are changing actually the whole neighborhood. That if we can do that, then we can do everything together, I think. I really think.
But then it's a combination of lots of small scale initiatives, you would say. Because on the one hand you're saying, like, I think the beauty of this particular initiative was that it was small scale and very adaptive to the individual needs. But then still you say, think big. We should think big.
If we don't think big, then there's no relation between the one thing and the other thing, and we have to start making connection and relations between one activity, one project, and make big lines in that.
Yes, and people can inspire them. Other projects, and they can help. What you see in Rotterdam is that challenges are willing to help other people who want to challenge the city, and we will come up with a little learning book also with the steps, and that these learning books are made by people who have challenged the city and can share their experience and make it easier for the next one who wants to challenge Rotterdam.
Great. Letitia, you have been researching as a PhD student. You've been comparing the cities of Milano and Amsterdam. Can you tell us a little bit about your findings?
Yeah, so the idea was starting with the digital platform, so not for capital, but more platforms orientated to public participation and I would say mobilization of grassroots activities and initiatives. So I was actually pretty glad that I found similar initiatives in both city, and it's not a case that we are all year discussing about cities. So one of the first finding was that the city itself has its own agency. So instead of talking about intelligence that might be confused in my findings also with smart city, so with the idea of techno-determinism. And in Amsterdam, a colleague of mine in 2015, if I'm not wrong, was Doreen Zandberg, did this documentary about smart city in search of smart citizens. So actually what it came out is that it's not enough talking about smart, because which cities want to be stupid? I mean, it's always a bit tautological to say that. So the idea of intelligence, I would replace it with agency in that sense, because agency has two concepts. One is voice, so citizens can have their voice, and the other one is exit. It's like election, so you go to vote, but it's not is not taking for granted that what you vote will have an impact on the city. So the participation box is always a bit a power box. So you participate, you actually use your time, but at the end you are a mere node of a social, I would say, socio-technical system. So that's what I fear, and I don't want to be too critical, but maybe it's also good for the sake of the discussion to be. So, and as a social scientist, I'm always super critical in general. But anyway, what I've been investigating were two platforms. One was For Je Buurt. Sorry for my Dutch. But
For Je Buurt.
For Je Buurt. Yeah, for your
platform.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the other one was a civic crowdfunding platform in Milan. So they basically share the same characteristics and dynamics. The technical provider is different, of course, and the role of the local state is different. So one of my main findings was in Milan, the local state put a lot of, I would say, facade and money in it, whereas For Je Buurt was an independent initiative in which I always struggle with that, because when you open this box, you find so many projects inside. So as a researcher, I was actually struggling to focus on some specific projects in it. But what it was relevant, it was actually this idea that you already mentioned, the idea of engaging people through crowdfunding for a public purpose. And yes, technology matters in that sense, but what matters most, and we all agree on that, is the face-to-face contact. So we can talk about intelligence, we can talk about what I would say the powerful tools, which is technology, but what I found is that anyone was in need to talk to their neighbors, and then to actually discuss, not just click, but discuss face-to-face what was their needs, like what they share, what their discontents. So when I was reading the proposal of tonight, I thought, well, maybe collective, if we stick to the idea of collective and we stick to the idea of technology, is more connectivity than collective. So maybe it's not enough if we are connected, but is enough if we discuss and we actually be very, I would say, close and act together.
It's a little bit like what Iago was saying. It's the technology or the platform as an instigator of a process that then continues on different layers.
Yeah, that's why also the Urban Lab has a powerful role in the city. This is like the makerspace, because I've been investigating the civic crowdfunding initiatives, but also the digital production through makerspaces. So I would say the physical emanation of the digital production matters. And WAG here in Amsterdam is pretty active, and I was actually lucky to have these bridging ties between cities, in which WAG was in contact with few makerspaces in Milan. And well, there are similarities in the two cities. One of that is that citizens are in need of this voice, they want this agency. But they are often disappointed at the end, because as you said before, the idea of Amsterdam is more based on pilots. So these temporary projects are actually temporary. And also in Milan, they were suffering with that, because the civic crowdfunding was one round, whereas For Je Buurt is ongoing. So you see, you have to put all these elements together and try to find a fil rouge where you actually see some improvements for the city, some, I would say, emancipation or enlightenment of the city.
So I think, thank you, it's a great introduction, because I think that's a very, very interesting question for all of us. So how do you move beyond that pilot stage of all these new emerging initiatives, sometimes even all these really cool instruments from cities? They have it built in their system, so they say you can only apply if it's your first time, you can only apply for seed funding, or etc. So how do you move beyond these like first-timer pilots, nice to on the one hand, instigate a different type of engagement from citizens to something that's more structural and more fundamental? Do you have any experience? Of course, the right to challenge is a very
Yes, and then I still think we need a lot of different projects, because the citizens are not all the same and they have different needs. So we in Rotterdam we have startups, and for them it's fine if they get money for a year. But we also have the right to challenge and other projects that deserve to get money for a longer period.
For initiatives that are a bit more grown up,
yes,
perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think you should, what we say is make 1,000 flowers blossom. And you should experiment and try all kinds of different things, which you evaluate and you redesign. So also with this right to challenge, we started with right to challenge, but we see now we made a pass through the organization to get difficult projects accepted and in uitvoering.
Implementation.
Difficult initiatives, we get them so they happen. But this path which we made through the organization is only for right to challenge. And we see other cities having the same problem, that you have a lot of initiatives which knock on your door and want to be helped. And for 80% of these, you have a pass and they go through your organization like this. But for 20%, they don't fit. They cover different departments, and right to challenge also, there is not one citizen who is challenging us and wants to do the job exactly the way we are doing it. They always want more. So we started with this small path, and we should broaden this path so that we can get this 20% of initiatives which don't fit also through the system. So I think that the biggest task for the City of Rotterdam right now is, how do we get the back office to really help to make things happen, to make it possible.
Also how to become a learning organization,
Yes.
because you learn from practice that some systemic things don't fit the reality. So how do you implement those lessons then within your organization, knowing that they are unexpected, because it's a 20% of...
We look at other cities. So I'm also talking to my colleague in Amsterdam and in Utrecht and in Tilburg, and we see that they already broadened the path in their organization. And we also are going to invite active citizens to help us. The citizens who already realized the project can tell us what we can do better. So, and I really believe in what Jago was saying, that you should have citizens and civil service working together. We can learn from each other, and we are both standing on one side, but if we can work together, we can get the best results.
Well, I think there are two main strategies that a government could make to have permanent structures, and one is creating permanent infrastructures. So if you, for example, have citizen labs in every neighborhood, and you contract new civil servants with new profiles of expertise, because this is another crucial thing. Civil servants many times are very old-fashioned in their expertise. For example, to build the digital platform, they had to hire 4 programmers, because there were 200 programmers in Madrid City, but none of them know how to program on Ruby on Rails. That is the strategy that is most used for free software now. So this is an example, but you can go to other examples. For example, mediation and facilitation, that there are crucial roles, human roles in participation. You will not find one of them as civil servant in Madrid City. So that it makes you think a lot of things, that you need new profiles in the civil servant staff,
And you also, I think we are always talking about changing the culture of the municipality, and I'm very passionate about my work and about the city I work for, but it's not hallelujah, and it's not that everything is going well. Sometimes I don't sleep because a project is treated so bad. But we are always talking, we should change this culture. But I start to believe we should get more citizens into the system. We just started a project and then we hired citizens in their own neighborhood to come up with plans, and they are paid a day a week to work on this for half a year. And they are, two colleagues of mine were selecting the ones who would get this job. And if I look around in the city of Rotterdam, a lot of the people I work with, they look like me. But if you look around in the city of Rotterdam, most people don't look like me. And these colleagues were doing these interviews, and they got all the nationalities coming by, and there were days that they didn't see one person that looked like them.
We used to say in Madrid City that all the infrastructure of work is built in an up-down way. So there is the mayor, and there is like the areas of government, and there is the high-level civil servants, and the middle civil servant, and no one is connected with the bottom. That is the citizens. What happened with the participatory budgeting? That is a mechanism that works upside down. The projects come from the bottom, so there is no a plan over them, and there is no a politician, an advisor, or a civil servant over them. So it arrive in the city government, in the working structure as aliens, So they are frightened about them, and they don't know how to do with some of them. They are like...
What Ines was saying, like it's difficult sometimes if your work gets challenged as well by ideas of people from outside.
So it's not open. I mean, the administration is not open. There are no ways to have permanent roles that are taken by citizens. So that's crucial.
One thing I like to tell about the project I just talked about, that this project had a project leader from the city. But the city was really open about how much money he costed. And then the citizens decided, we rather have the money he's being paid to go into the neighborhood. So he was
fired.
He was not fired, but he was taken off the project.
Okay.
And of course, I hope Right to Challenge gets really big, and I hope that many people will challenge the city of Rotterdam, because then at the end we will become a smaller company. And more of the money is going to the small projects in cities. And I think if we work with the knowledge from the people who really live in these neighborhoods, we can do so much better.
Thank you. We're going to go to Josien Pietersen of Netwerk Democratie, who has something to share.
Yes. As Network Democracy, we initiated actually also this series of discussions, and it's amazing that we're already at the 38th discussion of this since 2017. But I would like to add something about experiments and proeftuin, as it is called in the Netherlands often, is that, for example, For Je Buurt was an initiative of Network Democracy, and we started, and I worked for 2 years on the project before it became like a foundation in itself. When it started as a project that came from the analysis that a lot more tasks were put at the table for citizens to solve. So the government was rejecting a lot of tasks and gave it to citizens, and we thought it would be important that we give citizens more tools actually to deal with that, and also give them the opportunity to learn how to get their money themselves. So the education was always also an important part of it. How do you work with crowdfunding? How do you deal with that? And also, in the same time, give people the opportunity to find digital friends that can help you. And now it's an independent project, but it took us a lot of failure, actually, like 2 years of failure before it became something that is working. And I think it is important that local government give opportunity for this. And this was also a bottom-up initiative. It was, we thought it would be important for citizens to have this opportunity, to also have this critique on the government on the one hand, but also give them the opportunity to do something about it. Another example was Publix, which was also a leaking website for citizens to the Dutch press. We took the initiative with other partners, and in the end, after years, it became a very big independent platform. So I think time and also investment in ideas of citizens.
Yeah, so beautiful.
And Consul is, for example, now also, it's a foundation with 140 cities connected to it. But we're looking for budget because it is, we're now looking for the existence of Consul. Well, it's a huge platform, and you would say that everybody would be eager to support it, but it is very difficult.
So you're also saying, so that on the one hand, there's nothing wrong with all those pilots, because there's such a beauty in them, because they have the strength to grow into something.
There's two sides. Pilots should need a lot of time, but on the other hand, also not government should always try to do it themselves, because there's a lot of initiatives being taken, and they're not supported at all. These projects we developed, we did it ourselves in most cases, because there was no money for it. Governments try to do it, and it is not always working. But so governments should also invest in citizens' initiatives and really see what is happening, and be open not to do it yourself, but to support the project.
So this is about the transfer of responsibilities and even the transfer of power.
And taking risks, because it will fail maybe. Not all projects have to be a success, or can only be a success after trial and error.
Yeah, or sometimes their success is super indirect. So on first face value, it may not be succeeding, but then the lessons.
And you can learn
transfer
from the failures. You know, not every challenge in Rotterdam was a success, but we're doing an evaluation, and we are looking at what can we learn from this.
Yeah, exactly. So
we should actually celebrate our failures. Because then we can get focus on the failures, because you need failures to really make changes, and we are so scared of failures that we kind of step over it and don't change the way that we are actually that we don't do what we were actually supposed to do when we tried to do what we were doing.
Exactly. In a lot of cases think it's a nice idea, but we can do it better. And sometimes
Yes, I heard you say that. Yes.
So it's a matter of ownership.
I don't agree that government always takes over, but I do know that there's a strange perverted
tendency
thing in representative democracy, that you have to take over, or otherwise you don't get the press that you might have gotten when it was your idea as well. So there is something strange going on there, and I do agree that as soon as government takes over, you lose part of the potential of the project that you actually was starting.
Some of the intrinsic values as well. And I think comes back to the trust that Jago puts in the collective intelligence, because I think many of our systems are designed in a way that they are really risk averse. They try to make sure that there's no failures. They try to control for failures. Of course, it's never really possible to do so, but at least they're risk averse in the way that they handle and they think about the role of citizens. Even sometimes you have to make sure that there's no fraud, so everything is control and risk aversity, while maybe this nature of working with civic initiatives and working with democracy requires a certain risk-taking and openness to failures and mistakes. I'm gonna give the floor to the gentleman behind me.
Good evening. I'm
Can you
Imrad
introduce
Verhoeven.
yourself? Yeah.
I work at the University of Amsterdam. I do research. I've done a lot of research on the relations between citizens' initiatives and governments. So I like a lot of the discussion that's going on here because it shows, particularly from the two governments, that they have been learning a lot of lessons in the last few years, particularly also about how to make these things work within the organization. Okay, so I'm not saying this is. I mean, I would actually like to twist the discussion a little bit, if I may. I mean, you just tell me if I'm not allowed, okay?
Yeah.
Because
if it's
we
nicely
have all these.
complimentary, I trust
It's about
you.
democracy.
Yes.
So we have all these citizens taking initiatives, right? It's great, and there are a great variety of people doing this. But shouldn't we also ask ourselves, what if these people have conflict with each other? What if these people, if some, say, elderly people want a square where they can hang out nicely, when it's nice weather, and the younger people in the neighborhood have a different idea about the same square, right? So what does that, because I do think that those things are happening also out there in reality. It's not only like people are, adding to each other's wisdom of the crowd, they're also fighting each other about their wisdom. Okay, and that I think raises new questions also for local governments and for organizations like yours, perhaps also challenges. So I would like to hear a little bit from the people at the table. How do you see those challenges, and what do you think your task as representatives of the public body would be?
You want to start?
Beautiful. I think you said it a little bit in mediation and
I have a
facilitation,
good example
right?
of this situation in Madrid
Yes,
City. We have
go ahead.
a petition because we have a river that you will not call it a river because river in Spain are so small, but we have a small river, and it was like the water was completely how do you call that, like with a barrier. Okay, so there is no nature if you do that in a river. So and this government decided to open it. So birds appear. It was like a new nature park, incredible situation, and all the ecologists were very happy. But it was a row team, row team that used to play in the river rowing, and they were angry about that. So that's a little bit. It not was a initiative coming from a citizen proposal, but it was coming from the government. But because we had the platform, we could measure how big each interest group was, and that's a nice tool to solve that kind of things, because it sorted out that the proposal coming from the row team has 90 supports on the website, and the one from the ecologist movement has more than 3,000. So it was a way to measure stakeholders or interest group. So I think it's useful to solve that kind of problems. Also, it's true that it could happen in participatory budgeting, that situation that someone proposed a park there, but there is another collective proposing another thing, and finally there is a conflict. But that is why usually this kind of mechanism has some technical validation also in terms of representation. So we have been proposing this kind of panel review made also by citizens, but usually this work is being done by the political elected teams. Okay, so there are ways to deal with that, I would say.
But I'm very happy that you added this to the conversation, because we have a representative democracy, and it's very strange I can't see you now. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So we have a representative democracy, and the one and only goal of this representative democracy is to make sure that you make decisions in the public interest. So you need to use representative democracy in the use of public interest. And if any, maybe there's only one organization that has this part, unless you go to court and then you get into a whole different situation. So we need to trust on that, and we need that as well. Because we see more and more the higher the challenges in the city get, the more people that live in in smaller spaces, the easier the conflict gets as well, and the more the intensity of the conflicts rises as well.
May I just ask a quick follow-up question? But what would be your role as a civil servant, or the role of your politicians in that situation?
Now, there's lots of ways that we do, and I'm very happy to say that, in the contrary of Madrid, we have actually people working in the government as a civil servant that do pre-mediation. So it's not before we get problems. It's before it's escalated. We have people that go to the situations and try to normalize. It's not crisis, but it could be a crisis. So you have to know where these things start, and you really have, you have diplomatic vakmanschap. You need it. Craftsmanship. Thank you. To see when these situations start and to act as well. Not advise,
it's again being close to like what Ines is saying, being close to people rather than distant.
Yes, and there's also, I would like to add one thing, because there's also new ways of talking to areas where it doesn't go as well. It can be also on thematic things, but it's usually in areas. There's consent methods. There's methods you can use from deep democracy, because it's not only the representative democracy that has to handle, it's also the people that live in the area that have to start talking to each other and kind of get curious about what's going on here, and can I do something different? Can the other person do something different? And can we live here together, again, in a normal way?
Yeah, it's all...
And reach some form of closure.
Exactly.
In the deliberative process.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
sometimes a process will take more time. We had this challenge. This was about a design of a street, another street. And then there are people who wanted to keep the parking lots, and other people who wanted to have more playground and more green in the street. And we took more time for this participation process, because the citizens
sometimes we take too much time as well.
Yeah, we can take too much time. But
problems.
It is also what you are saying, getting to know each other. Why do you want this? Why do you want this? To ask each other questions, and then in the process, everybody understands that there is one moment we have to make this design, and we cannot make everybody happy, but can we find the best solution that not everybody's happy, but no one is sad, or that and somewhere in the middle.
Best alternative.
Yes, the best alternative, yes.
But in this regard, I was thinking, if we stick to technology, then there is another issue involved, which is media literacy. I mean, if we talk about participation face-to-face, there are, of course, the same dynamics. So pluralism is more exhaustive and is more time-consuming. But if we stick to the idea of technology, then as Iago mentioned before, we just call, a bunch of hackers, or the other way around. There are people that are actually not able to discuss the same topic. So it occurs some, delay and issues. So one of the main results also of my research was like, the Netherlands is pretty advanced. There are no data on cities, but there are national data about that. So media literacy in the Netherlands is lower. Like, let's say, more people use internet, and it's not a generational gap. In Italy, there is still a generational gap. So what I heard from my informants, especially from the civic crowdfunding platform, they were elderly people, and they were like, we want to make project, but it was not sexy enough for the platform. So it was actually excluded because we weren't able to upload the video from YouTube, because one of the criteria is also interesting, what kind of criteria for the projects has to be there, and what kind of requirements you have. So if we think about technology and democracy, then we have another array of problems. I'm sorry to be so critical.
No. So how does I think it's very interesting. So how does the whole, I know, all the different layers of initiatives within the city of Madrid? How do you control for that? Because of course, the City Madrid, the platform is not the only thing that you do. So you try to control at least for these different layers of media literacy, I would say.
Well, in general terms, we have nearly 100,000 people participating every year on participatory budgeting, a little bit less. It's true that the participation could be very, very easy participation, like voting, like selecting projects, for example. So we don't really know the age of the people who is proposing projects, but we do know that the people who is participating, there is no a gap in age. So we have the same curve as general elections, for example. So that's positive thing, but it's true that we don't know all the data, for example, who is proposing things. But it's very easy to make a proposal, so there is no gap. For example, you don't need to upload a video. It's just a form, like a form that could be fulfilled in your mobile phone or in your computer, and with just four fields that are that you are obliged to fulfill. So it's really very, very easy to make proposal, and we believe that there is no gap. But it's true that it's not the same uploading a proposal that winning a proposal, because to win you need you need the digital campaign. If you know how to make a digital campaign that is well known by most of young people, because it's just sharing it wherever and doing that kind of things, you will probably it will be easier for you. So it's true that this is happening, but it's true that we are coming from nothing. I mean, I always say that when I have this critic that before it was not even the possibility of making a proposal. Now with this kind of digital platforms, it's easier than ever, even for elder people. So you have to think about where do we come from and where do we go.
But the alternative might be a seed for something. Like when you just put a seed, then it will
but we have
that will grow. So it's exactly
a seed.
Yes,
something that will grow in the future. So it's not about
but for example, in Madrid we have also the office, and you can go to the office to make the proposal. It's like this is like the classical way to do things in administration. No, you go to the office and you fulfill something, and you can do that with proposal, but nobody does that. So I mean, thank God that we have the digital platform.
Yeah, this is a notion that comes back again and again when we talk about the more direct or deliberative democracy, that people tend to say like how inclusive is it? But then again, like how inclusive was that representative democracy that we're trying to challenge? So it's also not always as representative of everybody's desires and needs as we may think sometimes, because we have these mechanisms of control and risk aversity, but they also not always function as we would like to. Gentlemen,
There you are.
could you introduce yourself? And
I'm sorry. I'm Stijn. Thank you very much for your debate. It's very interesting. I actually observed a website called Argue. It's also an online digital tool that's used in the Netherlands. It's employed by several municipalities. And I actually want to ask you a bit about the nature of the topic that will be discussed on such platforms. Because on the one hand, you could say, for example, something like an asylum center. Would you, as a municipality, pose such a question to the citizens? On the one hand, you could say, yes. So I observed that on the platform, and I saw it got a lot of traction, because you could say it's a very controversial issue, and therefore a lot of people want to have an opinion on it. On the other hand, you could also not decide to, because it's very controversial. And it was interesting because that particular post got a lot of traction instead of less controversial issues, such as where should a parking spot be, or where should this and this not be. So on the one hand, you can create more participation by doing more substantial issues, but it could also be very controversial. And I also would wonder, so for something like an asylum center, would you allow citizens to challenge that? Or would you say there needs to be some sort of control on that?
so your question is like,
that's
what
actually
is
the question.
what kind of issues are suitable for these types of interactions?
Yes.
It's a very good question, and it's there's no one answer. I think we really have to think out the problem that we face and the design we make for the participation process. And actually, I think in Amsterdam we participate about maybe too many things, because you also have a representative democracy that knows what it wants, that has to deal with issues and that has to make decisions. And if they go out and they actually already know what they want, but they act like they go to the neighborhood, that they don't know what they want, and you can tell them what they go to the neighborhood and say, well, we're going to do this and that, and you can say if you want it or not, but they decide already. But it
we should be able to say no. That's I agree with you. In Rotterdam, we are also the Elderman. We tend to say yes most of the times, but we should.
But only go if the neighborhood really has something to say about it. Don't go if you already know what you want to do.
So no pseudo participation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
In terms
what
of the
kills.
asylum center, it's not really the neighborhood that has that is being the most impacted by it, I would say. It's more the asylum seekers themselves, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's also true.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we also have to think about the future. I think that's a role of municipalities also. If we are designing a street or there's a center coming, we also have to think about which people are you going to live in 30 years from now. It's not only about the people who live there now. We have to keep the city in a good state for a long time.
Yeah, but it's not to say that the representative democracy really thinks beyond 4-year terms of politics every now and then. It's
No,
also
but,
controlled by short term.
Yes, but if you look
No,
at
but not only. Then
not only.
I don't
No,
know,
no,
I
no.
don't.
No.
I really don't agree with that.
Not always, but
no. There are some big
there's-
big
We are building
issues
the
that
city of the
yes.
future
Mm.
every
Yes.
day, and most of the housing that we are starting now, the
planned
houses
for-
will be
yeah.
built 10, 12 years from now.
Oh, sure.
So it's not.
But it's not one or
only
the other.
short-term.
I'm saying it's not one or the other. Like coming back to what Jago was saying about the collective intelligence, like what questions or what topics are suitable to be addressed by that collective intelligence? Like what like do you believe that there's a limit to what can be solved with collective intelligence? Some things are more suitable than others.
But I don't know if I understood well this little debate, but it's about controlling content.
Yeah, so it's a little bit about like some issues, like he was saying a center for asylum seekers that may
Like
be a controversial
filtering
topic.
contents or
Yeah,
ranking contents from the government. That's a little bit.
yeah. So
The
so which
idea-
ones are open for discussion, basically,
I
or
mean,
open for
I don't
participation?
know. In our case, it is not. It doesn't exist this problem because contents are selected by participation. So you are. It doesn't matter which content is on the front page of the website. You cannot take it out. So if there are enough visibility for some of the contents, it doesn't matter that it's controversial. That is going to be on the top of the website.
But don't you find a bit of homophily? I mean, like the same content, like always like good practice? Because in my findings, when I did content analysis for both platforms, so just downloading the content of the posts and the description of the projects, of course, the redundancy was about social innovation, which is not necessarily bad, but there is a kind of jargon and a positive attitude. So instead of saying riot, you say initiative. Instead of saying, I don't know, it's a bit of, it's like this, a bit of conundrum with the social movement. Before you mentioned, I used to be an activist, and I used to be an activist as well, but I don't see any social movements. I don't see digital squatting, just to throw it. And I don't see squatting any longer anywhere. Not because squatting was good, but this kind of positive thinking sometimes is a bit controversial. So I don't know if I understood properly, but the filter, the content analysis showed me that it was always super positive, micro regeneration, but at the end you don't see that.
Mhm.
You know, like
Does it align a little bit
Wow.
with
I
what
think
you were
it's-
saying, Sjoukje? You were saying that we don't step up enough at the moment.
I think we do get a bit lazy, yes.
Hong Kong doesn't. People from Hong Kong, no.
I don't know. I don't know. I've never been to Hong Kong, so I can't speak about Hong Kong. But
Well,
I think it goes quite well, and so well that we don't really feel responsible anymore. And that's kind of
But
that really worries me.
yeah. But of course, there are issues that you you know that if it is going to be on this platform, will get a lot of negative attention. You know, if you talk about we have projects which people don't want in their backyard. And then I think it's a good thing that the government decides on where to put this, how do you say it, a caretaking centrum for drug-addicted people or a center for refugees. I think, and then of course they have to make sure that it's not only in the poor neighborhoods. They should put some in the rich neighborhoods also, and they should spread it equally over the city. This doesn't always go right, but I also think we are in this transition, and we are experimenting, and you know, all the tasks municipalities are doing they have a history, and most of them started after World War II. And now we are in a transition, and we have to look again, what are the tasks we really should do and we should keep on doing, and which we should let loose, and other people can do them as well. And Right to Challenge is a nice instrument to find the order in this.
Yeah, so we seem to still be figuring out whether there's limits to the direct democracy. I think we cannot solve that tonight, perhaps.
No, I wouldn't solve that here on the table. I think this is a very interesting time that we are. Nobody
Times of
knows.
transition.
Nobody knows. Let's experiment. Let's try to be more open. Let's give citizens a chance, but also think serious about what is the role of the municipality. And this is, of course, we are there for the public interest. We are there. We are not there for the people who yell the hardest.
Perfect. So we have two more interventions. I'm first going to go to Mees. Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Mees de Lind van Weegaarden. I call myself a social pioneer. I'd like to give some remarks on the change of roles connected to what Jago said about the role of a facilitator or mediator from the civil servants. I'd like to share two experiences that are connected to that. One was about 6 years ago in this building. After a debate of the leaders of the parties before the elections.
Election debates?
Yeah, it was an early one. And afterwards I asked some civil servants what should be changed according to you. And it was at that time there was a major reorganization going on within the municipality here in Amsterdam, and I was also following that a bit. But I was really curious about what these civil servants had to say about that. And they said, it should be changed that it's always going top down, up there, the policy is made, and the civil servants have to make some work that out to practical policies and throw that into society. And they should have more the role of connecting the society with the policymakers, the council.
That's a different role for the civil servants.
And I shared that on that night with the present Elderman for democratization, and he was really inspired by that, and that was the start of having some conversations with him about that. So that was 6 years ago. This morning, I was in a council meeting of the Committee for Healthcare, and I was following how the developments on this field were shared amongst this council, and I'm following this development for 4 years quite close, and I didn't recognize the image that was shared to this council, and I spoke with some council members about this, and I really see how things are deformed when it's put on paper and it's comprised, and I think quite an important thing is that also the city council members should be involved in another way, much more directly, and go much more directly into dialogue with people that are doing the work, and that they really co-create also the council members, and that's a whole different...
They co-create the council members.
Sorry, no, they should be co-creating with the whole field and
the policy,
yeah.
I hope, yeah. Good.
So
Thank you. Because of the time, I want to move on directly to Meluki, because then we have a moment to reflect on both interventions. Meluki, who are you, and what do you
Meluki
want
Gada, I'm a
contribute?
active citizen of Amsterdam, Amsterdam East, and so on. I have a question to the panel, and I'd like to the panel to say something about, let's say, the dark. We have heard a lot about the nice side of online platform and so on. And what about the dark side? What do you think? What could happen, or what happens already? Let's say very far from here, we are in South Korea 2 years ago, and there is
So
this
close
flow
our
of-
eyes.
Yes,
South Korea.
and there is this flow of Yemeni people from Yemen, and online platform have been used as a democratic tool, as a participative tool to do refugee bashing. On the other way around, if you look at Middle East, online platform has been used as a participative democratic tool to do bashing on foreigners in those countries. Think also of Europe and the use of online platforms by far right. Could you reflect about this, and what are, according to you, the different flows of streams in this nice sea of democracy? Because democracy and online platforms, they have a relationship. Online platforms are a tool, and democracy can lead to dictatorship. We have seen this in the history, or we see some kind of, let's say, Italy, five-star movement, and all those parties using online platforms also for bashing migrants. What about the many streams of opinions within this sea of nice online democracy?
Thank you, Meluki. So that makes it for us at I would say 2 questions to end up this nice discussion with. Let's first go into the dark side of the platforms and how to avoid things that you were also addressing a little bit, like these systems these instruments can also be applied for different outcomes that we may not desire. And then I would love to close off with the question about sort of the systemic part, more like how do you get your organization to join you, considering that we have a group of pioneers here, but how to actually systematize it. But let's first go into the dark side of the platforms. Leticia, as a critical social scientist, I think you have something to say about that.
No, I'm maybe I can start. This is a very interesting question, but very broad also. It's not just about platforms itself. I mean, when you have an archive or when you store something, then you already catalog. You already create some register. So, and you all
curating, you mean? You select what you put
you select,
in. Yeah.
you store something like platform does. They store knowledge, they store information. And if you know, like at Plantage, the first action that the social movement did was just get the fire in the archive to avoid that the Nazi will find all the Jews. So it's not the platform itself, it's more the societies. What I think is that in general platforms can reproduce the same inequalities, or they can actually fix something. So it's actually a very complex story, but you see
they can fix. You see, but you believe that they can fix things.
I mean, I'm not a techno solutionist, but I can be tech savvy, so I can think that there is some optimistic side in that because I use that. I am actually part of this production of knowledge and information. But I would just say that they can be versatile, so they can actually be useful for democracy.
And then do you have characteristics of platforms that are able to change things? Like what
So
is name one characteristic that?
Do you know Common Fair that is active but with cryptocurrency?
Yeah, do we know Common Fair?
Common Fair is actually a platform both active in Milan and in Amsterdam. They are working now with NDSM Treehouse, the artist residence there. And what they do is actually try to create, is with Jaromil. I think you know Jaromil from Dyna.org. So it's actually creating this blockchain without going to that because it's so complex. I don't understand what a blockchain is. So I admit to that too. But in general, they can create these commons, let's put in this way. They can create digital commons, like cryptocurrency. And in NDSM Treehouse, what they do is actually create this common coin to exchange and store not just value like money, but also time. So the idea of a community, the idea of this, I would say, this fascinating side of platforms. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, good. Someone else? Characteristics of platforms?
Well, yes, it's a little bit directed to, I think, our platforms. Well, I think a little bit more or less the same. A digital platform is like a white paper. It could be whatever. So it's more about the democratic principles behind. So I think the worries are behind the possibilities of direct democracy that we have seen eventually in some countries with direct democracy like Switzerland, that also populist proposals can go up and could be far-right proposals, for example, or populist proposals. And I was also speaking about that earlier, that this kind of mechanism could be conquered by a campaign that just share things, propose without reading a lot my proposal, and you will solve the problem of immigrants. No, for example, it could be working like that, and I think it's what he's talking about. So direct democracy has those problems, and I have described why how with deliberation, giving information to citizens and letting them think more and base decision more on that on just clicking activism or something like that.
So you have quite a strong belief in the capacity building aspects of a deliberative democracy, right? So the fact that people do participate more intensively also gets them away from unthoughtful actions or unthoughtful opinions.
Yeah, I really, if I may, I really would like to ask you a question. If I heard this discussion, I would think you can moderate. Don't you use a moderator for, it can also be young people in their puberty who wants to mess up your discussion. So is there a moderator looking
on the platform?
On the platform, yes.
Moderation could be politically biased, so it's very dangerous. if you have a political content platform. So moderation has been just used in extreme cases of unrespectful behavior and offense. But it's like under the framework of human rights, no, that the moderator can erase something, for example. And it has been also used once because the platform received a massive attack from the biggest platform, the biggest forum that is called Foro Coches, that means Foro Cars. So it was everyone in Foro Cars going to the platform and making proposals that they were completely nonsense, stupid things. So they use a moderation to block this and turn it again in. So yes, there is moderators. There are different civil servants that are moderators, but they are not using it as like just for very basic maintain of
sorry,
human rights.
to add something, because I think some people don't understand that Council is initiative based, so it is actually in itself it is positive. It's not people are not discussing topics. Someone is putting an idea of or a project on it, and then is being supported. So the idea and the fear that there will be all kind of discussions and riots online, I think that is not the case on platforms like Console. So it is completely different atmosphere than.
It's true that we have very radical proposal against the mayor, for example. There are. I mean, it's used. It's not the objective, but it's being used for reclaims also, and for saying radical things. And we have a lot. I mean, if you study the database of proposal, you will find a lot of radical, crazy things there. But it's true that these kind of things don't promote to like the more supported proposals.
So that's the controlling mechanism of the collectivity still, sort of. Okay, so we're gonna have to finish with, I would love to finish up with your last remarks on those future prospects. So the central question of tonight was, to what extent do all these experiments actually have the capability to change the democracy? And we've touched upon how it's being implemented in different layers of the system and how it affects the system. But what do we hope for the coming years, I would say? How would it affect democracy? Sjoukje, as head of democratic innovation and democratization of the City of Amsterdam.
Exactly. Who doesn't want to do it by herself, but with the community for
to
a
go
start.
so to go extinct in your position, is that your wish?
That's
biggest wish?
That's my main goal.
Okay.
Nobody would, because as soon as you have a person, like we have the Elderman now, everybody's looking at the Elderman, but nobody's looking at the actual problem. And if we start looking at the problem and not looking at functions or people, we could have already started to tackle the problem. So my biggest dream is that we all stop talking about each other and start talking with each other, start building new practices, be responsible, have lots of fun, make more mistakes, and see how we can link experiments and different projects to each other, and see that we are actually changing the way we live in a city like Amsterdam, because it's nice now, but it has to be nice in 30 years as well. And 30 years is very nearby, I think. And we are the ones that decide how the city will be able to act in 30 years. And it's politicians, it's civil servants, it's people that live in the city, it's people that visit the city, it's scientists, it's everybody who loves the city should care about the city and should act in a way that we preserve what we have. That's my biggest wish. That's what I'll be working on with all of you.
Yeah. Thank you. Letizia, your prospects.
Well, if I think about platforms itself, like digital platforms, I see potential. So I see something that is actually creating more access. So it can open up, but it can also close off. So my concern is like, just, okay, it's like inclusion, exclusion, no? If there is inclusion, there is always someone who is excluded. So maybe we just aim to ask always like who gets what, who is excluded. And when you get these answers that are difficult to grasp, then maybe you can do something, start doing something. And then look at the failure, look at the winning side, but just be critical in that.
Take into account who's missing, keep an open chair at the table.
Yeah, and who owns what. Like also, the slogan, when I just moved to Amsterdam, it was like, who owns the city?
Yeah.
So Saskia Sassen slogan, I was like, and now who owns the digital city?
Yeah.
Who owns our city, or not mine, but maybe.
Great, thank you.
What I think we need a new kind of politicians, because now you see that they step forward and they have their own plans, and if you want citizens to participate, you should also make sure that there is enough money for them, that you don't use all your civil servants to do the tasks for you. You need to create an open space. And I'm not really afraid that we have to do a step backward, because the society is changing so fast. We have to be able to move along. We have to be flexible. We have to innovate, and it's not something we do by ourselves. It's something that we do together. So what I see in Rotterdam is that the people who have challenged us and who have been paid for the tasks they do for the city, next time you ask them to help you out, they won't do it for free anymore. And you know, these things are changing, and we have asked so much from citizens, and we invited them to talk with us and to think along with us, and they have done so. They've put so much energy in it, and we are entering a different century where the rules are changed, and of course there are some structural things we have to do. I was talking about this path we have to make through the bureaucracy, and and we need a part of our civil servants to be replaced, and we need politicians to think different. But the most change is coming from all these civil servants that knock on our doors, that come with good ideas and that aren't complaining anymore, but they are coming up with the solutions.
Great, thank you. Hey, Iago, for you.
Well, connecting with something that you have said, I wish politicians turn into something more similar to a mediator or a facilitator than this kind of media rioters that they are now. and also what I'm seeing is this is connected with something that we were mentioning, that there is no open field for failure, no, in this kind of project that institutions are trying to run or are trying to support. In Media Lab, we have been developing this idea because most of the project of Media Lab, they don't need a concrete product in a classical term, no? So we used to say, because everybody is anxious, and when there's this kind of 15-day workshop, and the days when there is 3 days and you have to present what you have been doing, everyone is anxious about what I'm going to present, how is going to be my product, and they think many of them in a classical way. And we used to say to them, your product are your discoveries, what you have been learning in the process, okay? So it's very important to think that nowadays maybe making things and using our hands or heads to propose things, maybe it's just the way to learn how to solve things. So maybe we need 100 people proposing things that are not correct to finally have this kind of move that produce the final answer that could be the solution. And to make an abstract phrase, I would like to quote Audrey Tang, who said a phrase that I think is described this very well. That is, the process is the product. I think that's a key quote.
Yeah,
And that's
beautiful.
it.
We've been talking here also with the people behind the common strategy a lot about moving from best practice to best process, and that the beauty is in that, because we tend to focus a lot on those initiatives that are seen as practices, but most of the time they're actually the processes behind it that we learn from the most.
Yeah.
And in a couple of weeks there's going to be the Creative Bureaucracy Festival in Berlin. I don't know if some of you know that, under the reign of Charles Landry. And I know, for example, what he does is he organizes, it's a concept of the fuck-up nights, but he does the same, but then with civil servant fuck-ups or politicians fuck-ups to share what they've learned from their worst processes. So don't forget about the worst processes as well. But with that, we're already a little bit over time. I think it's time for a beer, a glass of wine. I want to thank you very much for this beautiful discussion and the openness to also talk about some of the sensitivities and the critiques and share your learning experience. This is not what I expected entirely. I thought I was going to announce to you that September the 20th, there is the next New Democracy with David Bollier, talking about the power of the commons. Oh, it's over there, sorry. Oh, it's Urban Provocation. It's not a new Democracy, but it's a new series. And the 20th of January, this series, so it's a little bit of time ahead of us, but this series will celebrate their 40th birthday with a New Democracy Summit with some of the best lessons and processes that we've learned along the way. So note that down in your calendar. And of course, don't forget to pay as you like when you if you liked this discussion, to support all the free events at Pakhuis de Zwijger. Okay, and thank you so much to our panelists, and keep on learning and innovating. I think
Thanks
together
to
we
you.
can. Thank you.